why am I showing you the photo page of my passport? I guess because one key thing on that page has changed recently, and that's my last name. So I recently got married to my wife Alice just over 6 months ago now. This brought up a really interesting conversation around what we were going to do with our last names moving forward. It's really important to understand the key motivation behind me changing my name. And that was because Alice and I really straight off the bat agreed that we wanted to have the same last name moving forward once we were in fact married. This conversation all started when Alice, she was in the kitchen and she was just sounding out what her name was going to sound like. And she kind of made this presumption that she was going to be Alice Smith. It was at that point in time that I kind of threw out this idea of, what if I was Phil Worthy? It kind of almost immediately got laughed out of the room like it was some crazy idea that would never happen. In the back of my mind, it started to really grow and fester into this thing that I became quite passionate about and something that I really wanted to do. It was when we started to have these conversations with close friends and families about me changing my name that I realized it was quite a challenging thing for many people, particularly my parents. It's really important to note that this wasn't about throwing away the Smith family name or disregarding that family history. It was really all about moving forward and creating a family with Alice and aligning as a family unit moving forward and looking into the future. And I can sit here and talk at you for hours and hours and hours about what I think about this topic, because I've thought about it for a long time. But the interesting part is to actually hear what other people think about it. So I thought I'd jump on Skype, have a few conversations and see what people think. So here goes.
Hey mate.
Hey, how's it going? Hey mate, how's it going? What's up? Hello, welcome.
Hello.
Hello. Hey.
How are you?
Hey. So first question is, what is your last name? And where does it come from?
My last name is Scarcella. It's Italian. Back in the Italian days, it was Scarcella. So a lot of people make jokes about that now. Tommy Scarcella. And he was born in Calabria, so sort of southern Italy.
I don't really know exactly where it comes from, but I do know that it's mainly British. So British, Scottish, and a little bit of German, apparently.
Well, my last name is Smith, and it comes from Matthew's family. I can trace it back to Matthew's grandpa.
So Perry is my last name on my father's side, and he's English, but I'd say that there would be some kind of Irish something along the way. I've never really looked into it.
My surname is Eastway.
Yeah.
And it's Northern English. So those who travelled from the east, so they travelled from the east, west, then they settled in Northern England and then they ended up migrating down and ended up in Devon. But that's where the east travelled from the east.
So what does your last name mean to you?
What does it mean to me? It means a little bit because of because it's kind of obviously Italian. So when people meet me for the first time or they see my surname, they sometimes ask, oh, is it Italian? Or, oh, where are you from?
Oh, mate, where do I start? I don't really understand why, but I've always had immense pride in my surname. Part of that obviously is, you know, some of the role models that I had growing up.
Well, I've had it all my life. And interestingly enough, there's a lot of people that compliment the name Worthy. It actually comes up in conversation when you're signing something or they're asking for your surname or whatever, and they go, oh, that's a really nice surname, you know. Yes, it's the name of our family, but I think the most important thing about our family is the people in the family, not just the name.
So for me, because it's my married name, the name means my family that I've created.
Obviously a connection with the past, with my parents and their family.
It's something I haven't really ever thought about terribly deeply until you decided to change your name. The Smith name gives me identification to Dad, being my husband. Since then, feels deeper than that because of having had such a good relationship with Matt's parents. That's gained more depth than I probably would have bargained for. when I first married Dad. Yeah.
My last name is neither here nor there. Like, I've never been attached to it. Only like since we got engaged have I kind of been like, oh, Perry is a good name. Maybe we'll keep it as like the middle name. But I've always known that like I'm akin to changing my last name as long as it's not a shit last name. I don't know. For me, I'm Adele, and Perry or whatever I am.
Yeah, that's cool.
For me, it's just been my name, and for me to change my name would be a strange thing. Does it actually mean anything? Not really, but it's just what you're used to. So for me, Eastway is, I've got it tattooed on my back, actually. So if I change my name, I've got to change my name. That's probably
Commitment.
That's the first issue I have. But it's my father's name. Am I attached to my father like I'm my mother? No, I'm more attached to my mother. It's just a name.
Yeah. So back in the day when you guys got married and you changed your name, was there much thought given to that process?
To be quite honest, it was 1980. I was 21 and I didn't give it any thought whatsoever. Changing my name was just the thing that women did in those days.
I don't really remember thinking about it terribly deeply, but I do remember thinking, well, I was a Williams and became a Smith.
Yeah.
And there are nearly as many Williams as Smiths in the phone book. So I thought when both surnames were not that much different in terms of commonality, I didn't feel any grievance to leave my name and take on Dad's.
There wasn't a discussion, to be honest with you. It was just more of a process. Kylie never sort of suggested that she wanted to keep her own maiden name.
I don't know, natural. I just knew that I was always going to change my last name. And then David bought like a sign for above our door that's Eastway. And I think that I kind of don't have a choice because our house has Eastway written on it now.
I'm not like super attached to it.
Yeah.
It would be cool to keep it, but at the same time, there's no reason that one person would change the name over the other.
What was your first reaction when I told you I was changing my name?
I honestly wasn't surprised. Like, I think it comes down to how much you know the couple as well. Like, I don't know. I maybe it's just because I'm not adverse to change or breaking the norm. So
yeah,
I don't really care.
I was like, loser.
I thought it was cool.
Yeah.
I don't think I was crazy surprised.
Yeah.
I think I was a little bit surprised, but I was like, oh, that's cool. But then I was also like, that's probably something Phil would do. You guys are a cool couple. I know that Alice has a big family, and that was important to her. I kind of all realised that at the same time.
I was just like, why? What's the idea behind it? For me, I thought about, being a dad and having a son. I thought about how I would feel if my son came to me and said, I'm going to take another family's name.
Yeah.
That sort of struck a chord with me, I guess, like emotionally. I guess I didn't see the point of it other than making a point. So I guess I was sort of like, okay, so what's your point?
It's very individual to your circumstance and also to your relationship with your in-laws. You have such a beautiful relationship with Alice's family, and I think that's why it didn't come as a surprise to me, because I really felt like you were already part of the family.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know you anywhere near as Adele does, but she just hit the nail on the head.
My first reaction was that I thought it was a pretty ballsy decision, because I suppose it challenges the status quo. But I think the interesting thing about it was to actually understand the reasons why. And you made that pretty clear. And from that point in time to today, that motivation hasn't changed.
And I think that helped us understand it, because you were able to clearly articulate a thought process that made sense.
I think the other thing too that was really important for me was to also understand where Alice was in that decision-making process.
Yeah.
And that the desire to change your name was not something that was coming from her, but it was actually coming from you.
Yeah.
And when I started to sort of really press that with Alice, she was quite happy to have taken your surname, but the decision was, well, you know, Phil feels very committed to doing what he wants to do. And so, you know, the decision was not so much her pushing it, but it was basically something that you felt that you wanted to do.
I was a bit surprised. I think it took us by surprise because we weren't expecting you to do that. Like, I think we were both upset about it because of the timing.
Yeah.
Clearly, you know, there's no secret we didn't agree. We didn't really want you to do that. I think it was because I got a sense that you didn't hold the same value in the name that I did. You know, the name is, as I was trying to say, is more than a collection of letters. It's all about people. I felt that it was disregarding that lineage and that connection, and it's not from a family tree type of point of view. It's from a history and a personal history which you shared in.
I mean, I was really upset, as you know. There's a lot of hope invested in your children. We've learnt to understand that by being parents, but that hope of raising your child and seeing them through everything, and then, you know, one of your big milestones, of course, is getting married for some. It's a day that celebrates family.
Yeah.
And for you to turn around and say that you weren't going to keep that family name, you know, really was a kick in the guts. Because we were raised with this expectation that a boy keeps his name and a girl doesn't. We raised you two children with that same expectation.
I've become more accepting that perhaps what's in a name is not the big deal that it was at the time. You know, you're grown up and you've got to make your own way in your life. You know, I've got to respect that, and I do respect that.
I had a revelationary moment where I remembered how much I was looking forward to marrying Dad. I was so looking forward to being Mrs. Smith. It wasn't really a name, it was the process. All of a sudden, it really was a watershed moment where I was able to put myself in your shoes and empathise with your excitement and love for Alice and complete devotion. And I understood why you wanted to, you know, have her name and be together.
This is actually not about looking backwards. It's actually about looking forwards. It's actually about who you are as a family and what decisions you make as a family. So, like, you know, what's in a name, I guess. But the reality is it's the start of your family.
What does the last name Worthy mean to you?
Well, it has two meanings. It has like the meaning of it being my last name, that it is my family last name.
Yeah.
But then I guess the other meaning is the more like emotional meaning of family and connection and like a tight bond that I guess we have as a Worthy family. And I guess even though other people have the last name Worthy, I still associate Worthy with my immediate family and my brother's wives and their kids.
When we first started talking about this, what is your recollection of how the conversation went down?
Well, I don't remember specifics. I remember that we were wedding planning at the time. We talked about changing names, and I remember being like, oh, Alice Smith, like, it sounds good. I can work with that, Alice Victoria Smith. And then you said, oh yeah, what about Phil Worthy? And that was like the first moment that you kind of brought it up, was when you said that. And I was like, yeah, right. It was left. You like didn't really talk about it again. And it was just one of those things like name changes, get the celebrant, la la la. And then it probably was like a good couple months before we actually got married that you brought it up again. And then that was the catalyst for future conversations, and it became very apparent that you weren't joking.
When you tell people about me changing my name, what's the general reaction?
Well, it depends on like who the person is that is asking me. And it's funny because you sort of changed your name on Facebook but only recently changed it on Instagram. And I think was like the catalyst for a few like DMs that I got, like, did Phil change his name to Worthy? Like that kind of group of people think it's really cool and love it and think it's super modern and like they think Worthy's a cool name, so makes sense. And then you kind of get like the older generation of like my parents' age that are a bit more like questioning what's all that about, or like why did Phil do that? And the best bit was when I got like a question being like, what's Phil gonna do? What's he gonna do at work? And that, I guess, brought the whole thing home, which is what would it mean for me professionally if I had to change my name? The same thing. And we just kind of get on with it.
Why is it important to you that we have the same name?
Well, for me, it's like a family, like the last name especially, for me, represents like a family unit. And for me, it didn't really matter if I changed my name to a Smith, because growing up, whenever like you're a young girl and you think about your wedding, you always imagine your last name changing. Like, you know, you go through school and you're like, oh, what would it be like? Does his last name go with mine? So it's just growing up, I'd always sort of thought that. Either way, whether it was Smith or Worthy, for me, it's like being a family unit. And you can still have that without the same last name. It's just a personal thing of like all have the same name, especially when you bring kids into it. Just having like your kid go to school and knowing that like you have the name, and yeah, that's all it is for me.
So I hope you found some of these conversations interesting. I definitely find this kind of topic of conversation more and more interesting as I speak to more and more people. So I'd love to hear what you guys think about this. If you want to comment below, and I'll be creating a few more of these videos. You know, I thought it was a great time with self-isolation to kind of do something new, something creative. So I hope you've enjoyed, and keep your eye out for the next one.